Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and this is the A95K, Sony's flagship OLED TV. It's also one of this year's most popular TVs, and that's because it's a QD-OLED screen with increased brightness, impressive colours, plus the usual 4K, 120Hz, VRR and Dolby Vision support. I think for most of us, this TV will tick every single box for movies, gaming and even the overall design. But is it perfect? Well, there are a few areas that could impact your final decision on if it's worth buying, which of course I will cover today. So firstly, this TV looks absolutely incredible. From a picture quality point of view, it is without question the best OLED panel that I've ever used. It's bright, colourful, sharp and pretty well balanced in almost every way. I can say that for anyone who wants the best looking TV today, this is it. Out of the box, the image really is stunning, and that's helped by the fact that it's not only a 4K OLED screen, it's a QD OLED screen. This combines the benefits of an OLED, including those inky blacks, unbeatable contrast and viewing angles, with the benefits of quantum dot, so a brighter display and more vivid colours. It's kind of the perfect blend of the two. Then when you factor in some of Sony's processor technologies such as the Cognitive Processor XR and XR Trilumis Max, we've got an OLED TV that produces some of the best natural colours on a screen. Pair that with the BT 2020 colour space and it is stunning. No matter what you throw at it, you will be impressed with how good it looks. Now, I'm a huge fan of OLED TVs. The black levels, contrast and clarity are hard to beat, but we know there's usually a couple of downsides to them, and that's the risk of burn-in and the brightness levels. And it is pretty obvious this isn't just a normal OLED, it is noticeably brighter than what I've seen before. But it's not just the highlights or the white areas of the screen that appear brighter, it's the entire screen. And this is down to the fact that QD OLED uses a blue rather than white light, which in turn gives us a brighter image. It also massively helps with preventing the colours from looking washed out. And this applies to both movies and games. And as for the black levels, these are perfect. But it is worth mentioning though that if you keep the ambient sensor on, which I turned off immediately, it might make the black levels look a little grey instead of jet black. So if you do experience this from your TV, check the settings and switch off the ambient mode. And to really test this out, it seemed only fair to watch about 5 different movies over the last week, both during the day and at night, just to see how capable this TV is. And I've not had a bad experience at all. This has included animated movies where you really notice the colours pop. Everything looks vibrant and colourful without looking oversaturated. And this is during the day with loads of natural light in the room, yet the image on screen still looks incredible. Of course, showing you an animated movie is an easy win. They will always look great, but it's the normal movies that support HDR or Dolby Vision that blows me away. And that's where I had to rewatch Top Gun on this TV, and as you can imagine, I was not disappointed. The skin tones, contrast and overall picture brightness looks incredibly well balanced, and at no point did I feel the picture was lacking anything at all, which is definitely a feeling that I have had with some other TVs. Now individually each feature is impressive, so the brightness, the colours and the contrast, but it's when you combine all of them together you get this incredible picture. And although the A95K is a 4K screen, Sony has what's called an XR 4K upscaler. This takes any non-4K content and upscales it to nearly 4K quality. This means watching those old Netflix shows or even live TV will look that little bit better than before. Now I did very slightly tweak the settings on this TV, but I'm talking about reducing the colour a couple of points, and then of course turning off the ambient mode. Other than that, out of the box, this TV does look great. And for me, this is a huge selling point for any TV, as let's be honest, most of us want to just unbox it, switch it on and start to use it, not spend hours reading and tweaking the settings for every input. Now by default, motion is switched on, and I don't think I've ever seen a TV handle motion perfectly out of the box. That's because it usually needs either reducing or turning off completely. Now I have found that turning the motion settings down feels like the right balance, but of course I know this is subjective. So what works for me could be too smooth or not smooth enough for you. But as far as motion handling goes, this is very impressive. I've also not noticed any banding, which is something that can occur on TVs. But this is down to Sony's XR smoothing to help with the image tones and the shades, so it gives us a really nice and clean picture. And then there are the gaming features, and if you're like me, there's a good chance you'll be wanting to plug in a games console or even a PC. Well, fortunately, it's packing almost all of the features that you could possibly need from a TV for gaming. Firstly, we have HDMI 2.1 ports, and this gives us 4K and 120Hz support, so it's perfect for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. Unfortunately though, we do only get 2 of these ports, as the other 2 are for HDMI 2.0, and then one of these ports are reserved for eARC. So once you've plugged in your AVR or your soundbar, you really only have one usable HDMI 2.1 port. For most that won't be an issue, but when there are other TVs that have 4 usable ports, it might come as a surprise. But from a gaming spec point of view, we've got VRR or the variable refresh rate, and this gives us support on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, so games will naturally look and play a lot smoother. Then we have ALLM, or the Auto Low Latency mode, but playing games at 4K or 120Hz looks absolutely incredible on this TV. When you factor in the brighter screen, the VRR and HDR support, it is stunning with any game that I've tried. Also, as the A95K supports something called Auto HDR tone mapping, it means the HDR settings are instantly optimized when you turn on your PS5. So that means no more messing around with the brightness settings, as the TV and the PS5 will select the best HDR settings for you. It's kind of how it should be for every TV. One thing to note though, that although this does support every gaming feature that you could need, it doesn't have a dedicated gaming hub or menu like we've seen on LG and Samsung TVs. This of course won't take anything away from its capability, but it would have been nice to have seen an overlay where I could quickly change some settings or view the FPS counter or whether VRR was enabled. Oh, and that reminds me, for some reason the full capability of the HDMI 2.1 ports are not enabled by default. You need to go into the HDMI settings and toggle them on to get the most out of those ports. So we know the picture looks great for gaming, but what about motion? Well, I've tested a few different games out over the last week, including Spider-Man, God of War, as well as Gran Turismo. And from the hours of gaming that I've put into this TV, I can safely say the motion is perfect. And any games that support VRR works really well. It also has a very low input lag at just under 10 milliseconds, so overall it's a really good all-rounder TV. Now we know it obviously supports 4K as well as 1080p. But unfortunately it does not support 1440p out of the box. I think for most this won't be an issue, as you're probably going to default to the 4K option. And if you're using a PC, well, you can actually still force the resolution through at 1440p. But if you plugged in, say, a PlayStation 5 and you try to select 1440p in the options, you will get an error message saying the TV does not support this format. Now you won't be surprised, but the viewing angles on this TV are awesome. And I've said this before, but if you have seating off center like I do, it is always an advantage to have an OLED, as the viewing angles are always great. This means that the image on screen doesn't lose any clarity or contrast as you move around your room, and that goes hand in hand with the reflections. So I've got windows either side of the TV, so watching it straight on will never be a problem. But if you do have windows opposite an OLED, you're going to struggle to see what's on the screen due to the reflections. Well, this QD-OLED has one of the best anti-glare or anti-reflective coatings I've ever seen. So it's still got a very glossy appearance, you're still going to get that awesome contrast and clarity from an OLED, but as it has a very dark tint, it means it reduces the reflections in your room. And as with any OLED TVs, there are always risks of burn-in. Leaving an image on screen for long periods of time, including heads-up displays or taskbars, might cause an issue on long-term use. But saying that, all new OLEDs and QD-OLEDs have burn-in prevention software built in. The chances in you actually experiencing it is very low, and not something I would ever be concerned with. So let's talk about sound. Now the speakers on the A95K are actually decent for a TV. It's packing 2 speakers and 2 subwoofers, which gives us a nice balanced sound. They support Dolby Audio and Dolby Atmos as well as DTS Surround. And in the settings you can change the audio settings, including Standard, Cinema, Sport and Dolby Audio. Also, if you are using an AVR with a surround sound kit, well, you can set the TV's internal speakers to act as the center channel. All you need to do is wire your AVR speaker output straight to the TV. And this means you don't need to worry about putting a speaker right in front of the TV stand. But here's an example of what the audio quality sounds like.
Ramon, you have done it again. It's like the Sistine Chapel on wheels. I'm coming for you, Storm.
Now if you followed me for a while, you might have noticed I've just changed my speakers this week. So I've swapped out the bookshelf speakers that I've been using for about the last 2 or 3 years for some floor standers instead. These are still monitor audio, but it's their latest bronze range. Now I will cover these in more detail in a dedicated room tour video probably in early 2023, but I'm really happy with how nice they look and of course how good they sound. And back to the design of the A95K, which is totally different to every other manufacturer out there. Instead of adopting the typical stand where the TV is lifted about 2 or 3 inches above your unit, it sits flush to your unit with no lift at all. The stand is then placed either in front of or behind the TV depending on which way round you prefer it. I think from a design point of view this looks great. It's minimal without any bulky stand underneath. But there are 2 downsides to this layout. One is the fact that it leans back quite a lot if you put the stand behind it. And secondly, because it is so low to your unit, there is no way that you could place a soundbar or a speaker right in front of the screen. Of course you could install the stand in front of the TV and this will eliminate the leaning issue, but you still won't be able to put a soundbar in front of it. It's also worth mentioning that once you remove the plastic film, well, the bottom piece has a piano finish rather than matte. It's not a huge issue, but it's actually more reflective than the screen itself when you're watching it. So depending on the lighting or the windows in your room, there is a possibility you might see reflections. And when it comes to the OS, well, the A95K is running Google TV. So if you've used any TV supporting this before, well, it will feel familiar. The home screen has a large tile design with all of the apps that you have installed, as well as your most recently watched movies and TV shows, as well as some trending ones as well. For me, this is one of the nicest UIs and home screens that we've seen in 2022. It's also snappy and easy to use, which might sound like an obvious comment to make, but having a TV with a slow UI can completely ruin your whole experience while using it. It's worth mentioning that there is a camera bundled with the TV, which can be plugged into the port at the top. It's not something that I will ever use, but it is supposed to optimize the picture and sound depending on where in the room you're sitting. It also supports gesture controls, video chat, and some other features as well. And then we've got the remote control, which is a nice upgrade to what we've seen before. It's got a metal case now and minimal buttons, plus it feels a lot more premium to the usual plastic ones. Mine actually came with 2 remote controls, so I've got the original one as well as the new metal one. But I'm not sure if this is worldwide or just for a European or a UK thing. Now, as for any issues or improvements on the A95K, well, it's a relatively short list, but of course these could impact any buyer's decision to actually commit. Well, the first one is the fact that we only get 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. For most people that is enough, but once you've plugged in your soundbar or your AVR into the eARC ports, you've now only got 1 port left. So if you're using an Xbox and a PlayStation 5 at the same time, you'll need to bear that in mind. And although the stand looks great to me, if you are using a soundbar or you want to place something in front of the screen, the stand could be a little bit too low for a lot of users. And the fact that this TV is currently only available in a 55 or 65 inch version could be an immediate turnoff. We've already seen loads of larger OLEDs in the last couple of years, including the 70 inches and the 80 inch range. So if you're looking for a 77 inch OLED like we've seen before, you might want to wait until next year to see if we see larger QD-OLEDs. And then finally, we've got the price, and the A95K is not cheap. It's always difficult to talk about the prices of these TVs as they're constantly changing and are obviously different in every country. But here are the launch RRPs and the current sell prices for the 55 and the 65 inch models. And this is a lot of money, although you are essentially getting the best looking TV in 2022. Whether you can justify this cost comes down to if you see value in the QD-OLED over a normal OLED TV. For the same price as these, you could pick up a larger OLED TV instead. For me, the A95K really is the best looking TV this year, and it is nearly perfect. If the minor improvements or issues that I've listed are of no concern to you, this is the TV to buy, and you will be blown away by how good it looks for both movies and gaming. And to end the year, next week I'm planning on doing a comparison between the A95K, Samsung's S95B, and LG C2 and G2 OLEDs. Essentially, I will pick my favourite TV from 2022, covering the pros and the cons of them all. Now drop a nice QD-OLED in the comments and I will give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my A95K unboxing video next, as it covers the full setup and installation of this TV. Thanks for watching, please like, sub and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.